Welcome back, guys. I hope you are all doing well. So, today's my topic of discussion is about the CSF. In previous video, I briefly explained the ventricles of the brain which contains the CSF. Now, today's my topic is CSF, its properties, its definition, its composition, and its functions. Okay. So, what is CSF? CSF. CSF. Cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, it is a fluid which contains a lot of nutrients. And where are the location of these fluid? Cerebro means brain and spinal means spinal cord. So by the name we can guess the definition of the cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid is a clear, colorless, transparent fluid, okay, which contain a lot of nutrients, organic, inorganic nutrients, which supply the nutrients all around the cerebral hemispheres of the brain, also the spinal cord. So this is the simple definition of the CSF. Okay, now we talk about the location of the CSF, the ventricles of the brain. Okay, how it forms in the ventricles of the brain by the choroid plexus, which contains the cells which produces the cerebrospinal fluid inside the ventricles. So now important is where is the choroid plexus are present, okay, in the ventricles of the brain, in the lateral ventricles, also in the third ventricles, also in the fourth ventricle. But some of the areas of the ventricles where choroid plexus not present, so it means their CSF not produce. So what are the areas? So I have to draw the lateral view of the ventricles of the brain. So this is the lateral ventricle. I have to see from the side view, so only one ventricle I can show. Other ventricle, other lateral ventricle is just posterior to this ventricle. Okay, here is the third ventricle and here is the fourth ventricle. Okay, and the connection between these ventricles, guys must remember the connections. What are the connections between these ventricles? The lateral ventricle connect the third ventricle by interventricular foramen of Monro. And the third ventricle, this is the third ventricle and this is the fourth ventricle. And the third ventricle connect with the fourth ventricle with the help of structure called cerebral aqueduct. Okay, so what are the locations of the arachnoid CSF which travels around the brain? So these are the ventricles of the brain, and you guys must remember the choroid plexus. So I have to complete the lateral ventricle. This is all the lateral ventricle, C shape lateral ventricle. Okay, so in this area of the lateral ventricle, the anterior area of the lateral ventricle, anterior horn of the lateral ventricle, there is no choroid plexus, so it means here not CSF produce. In the posterior area of the lateral ventricle, here is also not choroid plexus, so it means here not CSF produce. So the third one, this is the first one, this is second one, and this is the duct, cerebral aqueduct. This is the third one. This is the area where the choroid plexus not present. So if there is not a choroid plexus, there is not ependymal cells and there is not formation of CSF in these areas of the ventricle. All other areas which I highlighted in color here, this duct also, the third ventricle also, the inferior horn also, the fourth ventricle also, here all the CSF is produced. And guys, you know the what are the definition of CSF? CSF is clear, colorless, transparent fluid which travels around the cerebral hemispheres of the brain and the spinal cord. This is the simple definition of CSF. Now I tell you the properties of the CSF, okay, the specific gravity of the CSF, and what are the nutrients present in the composition of the CSF. So first I tell you the properties of the CSF. Properties. Okay, the CSF properties. So discuss the first property of the CSF. So the first property of the CSF, the volume of the CSF, how much the volume is produced, the CSF inside the ventricles of the brain. Okay, 100 to 200 ml. Okay, inside the ventricles of the brain, there is 200 to 200 ml CSF is produced. Okay, now the second property, at what rate the CSF is produced in the ventricles, at what rate? 0.3 ml, say 0.3 ml per minute. Okay, the CSF is produced at this rate, 0.3 ml per minute, so it means 600 to 700 ml per day. Okay, so now the third property, what is the specific gravity of the CSF? The specific gravity is 1.005 is the specific gravity of the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay guys, these are the properties of the CSF. And one more property which is very very important, the pH of the CSF. The pH of the fourth property, I write it here. The fourth property of CSF is the pH of the CSF. The pH of the CSF is alkaline. Okay, 7.33 pH. What are the pH of CSF? 7.33 pH. So guys, these are all four properties of the CSF. Okay, must remember the location of the CSF, the production of CSF, the where the pathways followed by the CSF travel all around the brain in the subarachnoid space and the central canal of the spinal cord, and the properties of the CSF. Now I tell you the composition of CSF. Okay, what are the composition? What are the components present in the CSF? So composition. Composition. Okay, so CSF is a clear, transparent fluid. It's a fluid. It means the content of the water is very very high in the CSF. So 99 and above percent water. How much water inside the CSF? Water above 99%. Okay. So if I tell you exactly how much it is, 99.13 water is present in the CSF. And other salts like there is organic or inorganic solutions also present, which is 87%, 0.87%. So its total is how much? 100%. 100%. Okay, water is 99.13% and 0.87 other salts. For example, the organic salts and inorganic salts. What are the organic things? Like proteins, urea, uric acid, sugar. Like these are all organic substances, which is which is in the 0.87%. Also in the 0.87% there is inorganic substances like sodium, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, like these type of minerals. So this is the composition of CSF, the water and the other organic and inorganic materials, okay, which form the CSF, which travels around the brain, also the spinal cord. So this is the composition of CSF, the components which is present in the CSF. Okay guys, one more important thing, I have to star it in red. One more important thing, lymphocytes. Okay, when the CSF, guys note this point, Note it. When the CSF is entered from the cerebrospinal fluid from the brain subarachnoid space to the spinal cord in the central canal, when the CSF enter from the brain in the spinal cord, the small amount of lymphocytes enter in the spinal cord, okay, in the cerebrospinal fluid. So what are the function of lymphocyte? It protects your CSF, okay. Any type of bacteria enters in the CSF, and what happens, any bacteria enter in the CSF, any waste product in the CSF, the lymphocytes kill that products, okay, and move out these products through the blood CSF barrier, okay, from the central cerebrospinal fluid and the blood. There is a barrier which allows specific amount of the nutrients enter in the brain, and specific amount of the nutrients which is harmful for the CSF and the lining of the brain, which moves out from the subarachnoid space towards the blood and expel out of the body. So this is the important point, the lymphocytes. Entry of the lymphocyte, when the cerebrospinal fluid enter in the spinal cord, the lymphocytes adds in the CSF, okay. This is also the most important point. So guys, this is all about the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. In previous video I explained the ventricles of the brain. In this video I explain you the composition properties, okay, the definition of the CSF and how it's made in the ventricles of the brain, and what are the parts of the ventricles of the brain not involved in the formation of CSF, okay. So guys, last thing which is most important is the functions of the CSF. Functions. What are the functions of CSF? One function, guys, you already know, it provides the nutrients all around the brain and the spinal cord, okay. Second function, it act as a, number one, it provides the nutrients, okay. Number two, okay, it act as a barrier, okay. It act as a barrier and maintain the pressure inside the subarachnoid space and the central canal of the spinal cord to prevent for any trauma, okay, prevent from the trauma. It act as a barrier, okay guys. These are all the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid. It provides the nutrients, okay, it provides the barrier, okay. One third function which I tell you, the third function is involved in blood brain barrier, okay. Blood brain barrier and blood CSF barrier, okay. In blood CSF barrier, it allows the basically the choroid plexus allows specific transportation between the blood and the subarachnoid space. So it also involved in blood CSF barrier, okay. So guys, one last thing, the sodium and the potassium, the amount of the sodium, okay, the amount of the sodium in the cerebrospinal fluid is higher than the potassium, okay. Amount of the sodium is high and the amount of the potassium is not significantly low but low, okay. So guys, this is all about the CSF. So guys, I hope you like, share and subscribe my video, and press the bell icon to receive any new video. So guys, I hope you must made the notes related to all the points of the CSF. So guys, if you have any question, please ask in the comment. So guys, be happy, take care.